The security guard at the gate quickly radioed ahead, signaling an urgent situation. From my home office window, I saw a red Ferrari screeching to a stop in the driveway, its custom paint job shining under the afternoon sunlight. Ventelia, my ex-husband's new wife, stepped out of the car, holding a leather portfolio like it was a weapon. I took a deliberate sip of tea, which I had imported from a small plantation I'd bought the previous spring. At 45, I had come to understand that patience was the most effective weapon in any situation. Maria, my housekeeper, rushed in. "She's demanding to be let in. She has papers," she said. "Let her in," I replied calmly, turning off my laptop where I had been reviewing proposals for 3 new luxury developments. "And Maria, please discreetly record everything on your phone." Ventelia's heels clicked sharply as she entered my marble foyer, her presence impossible to ignore. I had to admit, she was striking, tall, with flawless features that only youth and top-tier cosmetic surgeons could create. She was exactly the type of woman my ex-husband, James, had traded me for after 2 decades of marriage. "You need to pack your things," she said, skipping any formalities. "Daddy's company has taken over this property, and they're demolishing it to build something more sophisticated." Her red lips twisted into a smug smile. "Although, I guess you wouldn't know much about sophistication." I glanced at my simple black dress, a sharp contrast to her high-end outfit. "Please have a seat." I motioned to the antique chairs I'd brought over from a French chateau. "Would you like some tea?" "I don't have time for tea parties," she sneered, tossing the portfolio onto my desk. "These are eviction papers. You have 48 hours. I didn't bother to open them. "How interesting," I said. "And your father's company would be Summit Luxury Properties, I presume?" "Yes, he just acquired this whole area. He says it's been poorly managed," she replied, wrinkling her nose as she eyed my decor, which had been featured in Architectural Digest last spring. "Obviously Summit Properties, owned by Robert Sterling," she added smugly. "My father is a very powerful man," she gloated. "This little house you've been squatting in? It's nothing compared to what we're building." I smiled to myself, recalling Robert Sterling's desperate pitch last month. He had been trying to partner with Aurora Development Group, the silent company that had been buying up prime real estate nationwide. He had sent countless proposals. "Does your father know you're here?" I asked casually. "Daddy lets me handle all sorts of business now," she said proudly. "And my first task is getting rid of my husband's sad ex-wife. James told me how you begged to keep this house after the divorce. Pathetic." I thought about James, how he had assumed the house was my only asset, never questioning where I disappeared to during those charity committee meetings over the years. Men like him and Robert Sterling never paid much attention to a woman's business dealings. "Tell me about these renovation plans," I said, stalling as I noticed Maria discreetly recording the conversation from behind a vase. "We're tearing down these old mansions," she waved dismissively, "and building modern homes for people who actually belong in luxury communities." She smirked. "I told James it was embarrassing having his ex-wife living here like a charity case." My phone buzzed, a text from my CFO about Sterling's latest proposal. I suppressed a smile as I read it. "And you're certain your father owns this property?" "Of course," she snapped. "The deal closed last week. Summit Properties owns everything, the houses, the golf course, the clubhouse. Now pack your bags before I call security." "That would be interesting," I murmured, "considering I sign their paychecks." She blinked in confusion. "What?" "Summit Properties did make an offer," I acknowledged. "It was firmly rejected, though, if I recall correctly." "You're lying," she said, though doubt crept into her voice. "Daddy said." "Your father," I interrupted softly, "has been trying to get a meeting with Aurora Development Group's owner for months. He's quite persistent." "Aurora?" Her perfectly lined eyes widened. "But that's the real owner of this community." "Yes." I opened my laptop and turned it toward her, showing her the proposals I had been reviewing, including about 30 others from around the country. "Your father's latest offer was quite ambitious, but ultimately insufficient." She grabbed the portfolio, papers scattering across my desk. "This is impossible. You're just a housewife," she exclaimed. "James said what he knew," I replied. Which wasn't much. Men rarely pay attention to their wives' charity committee meetings or investment club luncheons. I stood, smoothing my simple dress. Would you like to see the real property documents? I need to call my father, she muttered, frantically searching for her phone. Excellent idea. But maybe you should also mention how you barged in here, threatening the owner of your most coveted acquisition target, I said. I'm sure he'll be thrilled. The blood drained from her face. Please don't tell Daddy. Why would I do that? I picked up my teacup. Watching you try to evict me from my own house has been quite entertaining. And I should mention your Ferrari. It's parked in a no parking zone. I'd hate for it to get towed. She staggered back, her designer heels faltering. This isn't over. Actually it is, I said. But feel free to have your father call me directly. He has my office number. I smiled. Oh, and the next time you want to threaten someone with. Before attempting eviction, it's crucial to confirm that you truly own the property. Basic real estate knowledge. I watched as she quickly drove away, already on the phone. Maria appeared beside me with a fresh cup of tea. Should I send the recording to your lawyers, Mrs. Anderson? She asked. Please, and Maria, contact the property manager. It's time to reassess the compliance of all residents, especially the Sterlings. My phone buzzed again. It was Robert Sterling calling. I ignored it, imagining his panic when his daughter told him about the house she had just tried to seize. But this was just the start. After all, I didn't build my empire by revealing all my plans at once. I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer. David, remember that hostile takeover strategy we discussed for Summit Properties? It's time to move faster. The following morning, my security team informed me of 3 missed calls from Robert Sterling. I ignored them and focused on the real estate conference where I was set to be the surprise keynote speaker the next week, the same one where Sterling planned to announce his acquisition of my properties. Mrs. Anderson, it's Sarah, my assistant, buzzed in. Mr. Sterling and his daughter are at the gate. He's quite persistent. I opened the security feed on my laptop. Robert Sterling's Bentley was parked at the entrance, and Natalia looked far less composed than the day before. Let them through, I said. But have security take them directly to my office. I switched over to a Zoom call with my board of directors. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we're about to be entertained. Minutes later, Robert Sterling barged into my office, his expensive suit failing to hide his anxiety. Natalia followed, avoiding eye contact. Ms. Anderson, Robert began, but stopped when he saw the board members on my screen. We need to speak privately. Why? I responded. I think the board would be very interested to hear about your daughter's attempt to seize company property. I motioned to the chairs. Please sit. This is all a misunderstanding, he stammered, adjusting his collar. Natalia got carried away. She didn't realize she was threatening the owner of Aurora Development Group. Interesting, I replied. Considering you've been trying to partner with us for months. He glanced at my modest outfit and office, clearly surprised. I thought the owner of Aurora was a man, he murmured. How disappointing, I said. That you with your experience would make such an assumption. On the screen, several board members smiled knowingly. They were women I had met in the past when we were all underestimated by men like Robert Sterling. The deal, he tried again. We can still make this work. A merger between Summit and Aurora. A merger? I opened his company's financials on my laptop. Your company is heavily leveraged, Robert. Those acquisition announcements? They're all just smoke and mirrors to attract investors. Natalia's head snapped up. Daddy, what is she talking about? I continued. In fact, your hostile attempt to seize my properties was probably a last-ditch effort to secure funding before your creditors came after you. That's not, he started to protest, but the guilt on his face was unmistakable. Your father, I said to Natalia, has been running a shell game, announcing acquisitions without securing financing, using each one to lure in more investors. But it's all falling apart, isn't it, Robert? He slumped in his chair. How did you? He began. I've been watching you for months. Your aggressive expansion, inflated prices, mysterious funding that never came through. I closed my laptop. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate before letting you anywhere near my properties? We can fix this, Robert pleaded. A partnership. Actually, I interrupted. I had something else in mind. I slid a document across the desk. This is an offer to buy Summit Properties. The price is fair, considering your debts. He grabbed the paper, his face reddening as he read. This is robbery, he said. It's generous, given that I could wait 2 months for your company to collapse and buy it for next to nothing. I smiled. Consider it a premium for solving my problem quickly. What problem? Natalia demanded. Your residence in my community for one, I said. The buyout terms require immediate vacancy of all Summit-owned properties. I met her eyes. Including your father's house. She gasped. But that's our home, she exclaimed. Like this was supposed to be my home, I replied calmly, before you tried to evict me. Robert clenched the arms of his chair. You can't do this. I already am, I said, pointing at the screen. The board has approved the acquisition. Your creditors have accepted our terms. All that's left is your signature, unless you prefer bankruptcy. Daddy. Natalia's voice trembled. What about my wedding next month? The press announcements. About that, I said, pulling up another document. Given Summit's misrepresentation of assets, we'll need to issue a correction, especially regarding your claims about owning this community. Robert's face turned pale. The publicity will be devastating, I agreed. Though perhaps not as devastating as your daughter's recorded attempts to illegally evict the actual owner. Natalia burst into tears, mascara running down her face. This is all James' fault. He said, you're just a sad divorcee living off alimony. Yes, about James, I said, checking my watch. He should be receiving some interesting news right about now. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. I couldn't help but smile as I read it. It appeared that your husband had just found out that his position at Sterling Investment Group was being cut due to the ongoing restructuring. I had told Natalia about the changes happening because his father-in-law's company was being acquired. You orchestrated all of this, Robert accused. You let Natalia make a fool of herself just to set us up. No, Robert, you did that all on your own, I replied. I merely gave you enough rope. Sliding a pen across the desk, I asked, now shall we discuss the terms of your surrender? For the next hour, I watched Robert Sterling sign away his faltering empire. With each signature, it seemed like he aged a little more. Meanwhile, Natalia moved between tears and furious texting, likely to James, who wasn't responding. As security got ready to escort them out, I raised a hand. One more thing. I handed Natalia a small card. Contact information for my first real estate mentor. She specializes in helping young women build legitimate careers in this field. Looking her in the eyes, I added, in case you decide to earn your success, instead of marrying it. Why would you help me? She whispered, still processing what had happened. Because 20 years ago, I was underestimated just like you are now, I said. The difference is, I chose to prove them wrong through hard work, not marriage. She stared at the card for a long time before slipping it into her purse. After they left, my board members applauded. Beautifully handled, our chairwoman said with a smile. Though I suspect this isn't the end. No, I agreed, thinking of James and the other pieces yet to fall into place. This is just the beginning of their education. My phone buzzed with another message. It was James, finally realizing his world was falling apart. I ignored the text, instead pulling up the schedule for next week's real estate conference. It was time to prepare for my keynote speech. After all, I had quite the story to share about the risks of underestimating women in business. When I stepped onto the stage at the conference, the room fell silent. In the front row, Robert Sterling sat, pale-faced, while James shifted uncomfortably beside him. Natalia was missing. It seemed she had flown to Europe after the tabloids caught wind of James moving out of their mansion. Success in real estate isn't just about properties, I began, scanning the crowd. It's about spotting value where others miss it. Like when people mistake a simple black dress for weakness, or assume that a woman at a charity event couldn't possibly be building an empire. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as they started to recognize what I was getting at. I clicked to the next slide, a photo of the eviction notice Natalia had once tried to serve me. Last week, a young woman tried to evict me from my own house, I said, and laughter echoed through the room. She assumed, as many do, that a divorced woman in her 40s must be struggling. That assumption cost her father's company everything. Robert stared at the floor while James glared at me. I relished their discomfort. But this isn't a tale of revenge, I continued. It's about the mistakes we make when we let prejudice blind us to opportunity. Clicking to the next slide, I showcased the Aurora Development Group's portfolio. While some companies were announcing fake acquisitions, we were quietly building the largest luxury residential portfolio in 3 states, I said, letting the numbers speak for themselves. Gasps rippled through the audience as they realized the scale of what I controlled. Today, I'm announcing that Aurora is expanding into commercial properties. I paused for effect before adding, starting with the complete acquisition of Summit Properties and its subsidiaries. Robert Sterling stood up suddenly, heading for the exit. James tried to follow, but my next words froze him in his tracks. And as part of our restructuring, we are launching a mentorship program for women in real estate development. I smiled directly at James. Talent doesn't care about gender or age, something my ex-husband never quite understood during our 20 years together. The crowd erupted in applause as James hurried out of the room. I finished my speech by announcing 3 new luxury developments, then stepped into the wings where my team was waiting. Mrs. Anderson, my assistant said, handing me a phone. Natalia Sterling is on line 1. She wants to talk about the mentorship program. I took the call, surprised by the genuine humility in her voice. I've spent the last 2 weeks thinking about what you said, she admitted. About earning success instead of marrying it. I want to do it the right way this time. Be at my office Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp, I told her. And Natalia, leave the Ferrari at home. You'll be starting in the leasing office, learning from the ground up. Thank you, she said softly. And I'm sorry about before. After hanging up, I checked my messages. James had finally realized I owned his company apartment all along. His eviction notice had just been served. My lawyer walked in with the final papers from the Summit acquisition. Robert Sterling had signed everything. He was taking an early retirement. Make sure the settlement includes a non-compete clause, I instructed. And James, his golden parachute just turned into lead. The board had approved, nullifying his contract due to ethical violations. I nodded, gathering my things. Outside, my driver waited with the car. Not a Ferrari or Bentley, but a sensible luxury sedan that suggested success without shouting for attention. As we drove away from the conference center, I saw James arguing with the valet about his repossessed car. Robert Sterling stood nearby, looking lost without his company badge. Should we offer them a ride? My driver asked with a smirk. No, I replied, leaning back and checking emails about my next acquisition. I think they both need to learn the value of walking. A text from Natalia popped up on my phone. Thank you for the second chance. I won't waste it. Maybe that was the best revenge. Winning, yes, but also teaching the next generation of women to succeed on their own terms. After all, success is the best answer to those who underestimate you. I opened my calendar for Monday, adding a note. 7 a.m. begin Natalia's real education. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in defeating your enemies, but in transforming them into allies.